There we go. Hey, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the lenses that I use for the Panasonic GH5S. And this is not necessarily like the lenses that I most recommend that you buy. These are all fantastic lenses that have a lot of great qualities to them. But of course there are many options, many different lenses out there that would probably, or that could serve your needs just as well as these. So I'm just going to be looking at them, showing them to you, talking about their pros and their cons, what I most like about them, and then also the things that I don't like about them, and also offer up maybe just a couple alternatives for your use case. And the rest of this video is going to look different. For some reason I lost the intro that I recorded the other day, so I'm re-recording it in my pajamas. The lens that I use the most frequently is actually the one that I'm filming with, so we'll talk about that one last. But let's talk about, to start with, the one and only Canon lens that I still utilize to this day, and that's the Canon 16-35 version 2 USM lens paired with the Metabones Speedbooster XL, which is the 0.64 times Speedbooster. If you're confused about which version of a Speedbooster, whether it's the Metabones or Viltrox or whatever, to get, whether that's the 0.71 or the 0.64, the main difference between them is the field of view that you get. So obviously one is going to be wider than the other. The 0.71 is primarily designed to adapt crop sensor or APS-C size lenses, whereas the 0.64 is designed to adapt full frame lenses. Now they will adapt either, but you will get a wider field of view with full frame lenses out of the 0.64 version. However, if you have a really wide crop sensor lens and you put it on the 0.64, there is a chance that you will get vignetting at the widest. So keep that in mind. If you primarily want to adapt APS-C size lenses, just go with the 0.71 times Speedbooster. It's slightly cheaper and it's all you need. However, if you do want to adapt full frame lenses and you want to get as wide as possible and as close to the full frame focal length as possible, get the 0.64 times Speedbooster. Okay, back to the lens. So this is the version 2 of this Canon 16-35. There is a version 3, which is sharper and quite a bit more expensive. I don't think you can buy this one new anymore, but you can usually, it's used around $1,000. So depending on its condition, you can get it plus or minus $1,000. The version 3, I think is around $1,600 to $1,800. I'll check the price and I'll put that in the video. So the difference between them is this one is quite a bit softer, but for video use, for 4K video and 1080 even more, so this lens is plenty sharp enough to give you all of the resolution you need for 4K video. So I wouldn't worry about that per se. One of the most important features any lens could exhibit for video use primarily, or for filmmaking use, is focus breathing. And this lens has a really minuscule focus breathing, especially for a full frame photo lens. It has a linear manual focus, which is nice, always appreciated, and it has distance markings on the lens, and it also has like soft stops from infinity focus to minimum focusing, so you can feel it when it gets to those points, but you can keep rotating the lens past those points. What else to say? This has an autofocus and manual focus switch. You can get some autofocus with this and the Speedbooster, but it's not reliable in any way for video work. You can probably use it a little bit for photography. It's not going to be as fast as a native lens, but it still works a bit. So I just treat this as a manual focus lens. This is a constant f2.8 aperture, so it's pretty fast for a full frame zoom. However, with the Metabones Speedbooster 6.4, that 2.8 becomes a 1.8. So you get full stop, brighter, and even shallower depth of field. And so this 16-35 zoom essentially becomes a full set of prime lenses at 1.8, which is really great. If you do want to get one zoom to rule them all, you can do that with a Speedbooster and get a really comparable look. Optically, there's still going to be some advantages to primes over zooms, but it is definitely a way to go. Another really great quality to it is just the out of focus areas are really nice looking, in my opinion. They're really soft and round. One thing to keep in mind, so this has a really big front filter element, so there's an 82 front filter. If you have a lot of different lenses of different sizes with different filter sizes, one way to go about that to save money is to get the biggest filter, like so an 82, and then adapt your smaller lenses via stepping rings to that 82mm filter. So for like neutral density filters or pro mist or whatever you want to get. So paired with the GH5S, the 16 becomes around like a 19.4-ish millimeter. So you still get a pretty wide, verging on ultra wide look with this lens. And at 35mm, you're getting around a 42mm focal length. So you're getting really close to that full frame focal length, and you're also getting an f1.8 aperture with it. So it's really, I mean, this is probably my favorite lens, even though it's not necessarily my most used, because it is a little bit big. But I really like the way it handles. The GH5 is kind of a bigger body in terms of micro four thirds or even mirrorless cameras, so the size of this isn't too much. And even though you're adding on a little bit of extra length with the Speedbooster, I don't know, it's still manageable. It is, how heavy is it? It's 1.4 pounds, so yeah, it's a big lens, but these red ring lenses are just really high quality. They feel good. They're weather sealed. You know, they will last forever as long as you take care of them. There's a little bit of a cachet when you show up on set with the red ring. Some people who know what that signifies, I've had people comment like, "Oh wow, you got the red ring," and I'm like, "Well, it's the version 2 and it's used." And I even had someone who had a red camera compliment me on my lens. I'm like, "You have the red camera." Anyway, this also has a pretty close minimum focusing distance of 11 inches. So consider that we're talking from the front of the sensor, not the front of the lens. So let's move backwards and we'll go to the pair of Voigtlander Nokton lenses that I have. So these are really interesting lenses for micro four thirds. So these are native micro four thirds lenses. These are interesting because these are 0.95 aperture, so they're super fast for micro four thirds lenses. They have a range, like a full set of these, you can get a 10.5, a 17, the 25, and I'm not sure if there's something between the 25, I don't think there is, and then the 42.5. So I've got the 25 and the 42.5. So this is going to be your 50mm full frame equivalent, and this is going to be your 85mm full frame equivalent. So you can get, if you wanted to go that route, you can get a pretty nice set that covers about a 20mm all the way to an 85mm with these lenses. They are pretty expensive for micro four thirds primes. They are really nice for video because they're fully manual, so no electronics with these. So you have an aperture ring that is declicked for video, which is fantastic because you can change the aperture during a shot and it can be as smooth as you want it to be. They also have the ability to change them to a clicked aperture by rotating this ring on top. So just by rotating that, now you can have a clicked aperture if you prefer. If you're shooting photos, for instance, and you want to be able to know exactly where you are. So that's one cool feature that all of these lenses have. They have a really long focus throw of about 270 degrees. So that's fantastic for video as well because it allows you to get really nice, precise, smooth focus pulls with these lenses. I also have a focus gear attached to these lenses. They don't come with this focus gear on here. This is from a company called followfocusgears.com. A couple of negatives with these lenses is that they're all different sizes. So for video, if you are using a follow focus and a matte box, for instance, one or the other or both, and you want to swap out lenses, you will probably have to adjust your matte box and your follow focus because all of the lenses are different sizes and the aperture and focus rings are going to be in different positions. These also have different front filter sizes, but what's weird too is like the lens hood on the 25mm has a threaded front too, so this becomes a 67mm front filter, which is much more common. But then again, this one doesn't. Its lens hood doesn't have a threaded front, so they're just weird. But not the end of the world. They're not weather sealed, which is kind of a bummer considering how expensive they are, but they're fully metal. You know, they're built, I mean, they're solid, big glass, lots of metal. They've got 10 diaphragm blades, but they're not rounded at all. So you can probably see maybe as I stop down how much these get. They start getting polygonal. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. So the out of focus areas go from, at the widest, like a very cat eye football shaped rounded out of focus area. I'm not going to say the word. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then they get rounder, and then they start getting that sharp edge shape to them. There are some other negatives, so let's talk about those real quick. At 0.95 and probably around 1.4, these lenses are pretty soft. And they also have kind of like a really, like highlight areas tend to bloom. And there's a kind of almost like a glowing effect to the highlights, almost like you have some sort of softening filter on them. However, when you stop them down, I'd say by 2.8 and beyond, you're getting a really neutral lens. You know, they don't really have any other crazy characteristics to them. They start looking like any modern lens. Another couple optical negatives with these, when they're pretty wide open, there's a lot of chromatic aberration. You're going to see a lot of like purple and green fringing around high contrasty areas. Once again, it'll go away as you stop down. But one of the major selling features of these lenses is just how fast they are. However, they do exhibit a lot of kind of like not super great characteristics when they're wide open. Like the Canon 16-35, there's no focus breathing on these lenses whatsoever, so they're very cinematic in that regard, especially since you can get these massive focus pulls, you know, because there's such shallow depth of field with these lenses. The fact that there's no breathing on them is just, it's pretty epic. So that's one thing that these lenses have in their favor that is hard to beat. Some alternatives to these would be the Mikey or the Mike cinema lenses for micro four thirds. I don't believe there's a full set of those available, but I think there's 3 or 4 of them right now, but the rest of them should be coming out. Okay, let's move on to the ultra wide. So this is the Laowa, the Venus Optics Laowa 7.5 millimeter, zero distortion, ultra wide lens. So I recently did an overview of this lens, so you can check that out. I'll try to be brief talking about this guy. So this is a pretty fast for an ultra wide. This is a f2 all the way down to an f22, fully manual. So this is advertised as being zero distortion. So that means that for an ultra wide, you don't get any of that fisheye distortion. It's pretty sharp. At f2, it's going to be a little bit softer, and there's going to be some vignetting on the corners, but that goes away. I primarily use this for real estate. You know, that zero distortion is great. You're getting a 15 millimeter full frame equivalent, so it's really wide for real estate. Makes everything look big and bigger than it actually is, which is good. This is a, you know, all metal, not any weather sealing as far as I know. So with a lot of ultra wide lenses, you will have a protruding front element, which means you cannot screw on a filter. With this lens being so small, there is a threaded front element, front filter thread, so you can use screw-on filters with this lens, which is super helpful. And it's $499 United States dollars. So for what you get, it's pretty reasonably priced. Recommend it. So now we're talking about the last lens in the lens lineup. This is the Lumix 12-35 millimeter f2.8, but this is probably my most frequently used lens for the GH5, and the reason for that is that it's just highly versatile in terms of focal length from 12-35. It's kind of your standard zoom, so that's going to be the equivalent of a 24-70 full frame. And with that, it's a constant f2.8, so what that means is when you zoom, whatever aperture you're on, it's going to stay at that aperture. This lens is super lightweight, super small. You can see how small it is with the lens hood off, and even though it barrels out, it still maintains a pretty small overall form factor. Another really nice feature about this lens, especially paired with the GH5S, which doesn't have in-body image stabilization, is that this lens has optical image stabilization. So you do get some stability added to your shot with this lens, and you can turn it off if you need to, if you're on a gimbal or on a tripod, and you can save some battery with it by turning it off. And also there's a chance, although I've never noticed it, that the lens might be fighting the movement of the tripod or the gimbal, but I don't know, that probably doesn't happen very much. So it has pretty nice and round out of focus areas. Pretty nice and kind of comparable to the 16-35 in terms of the rendering of the out of focus areas. You're not going to get as shallow a depth of field with this as an adapted lens with a Speedbooster, because 2.8 just isn't going to be as shallow on a micro four thirds as a 2.8 on a bigger sensor camera. It's going to be more like a 5.6 in terms of your depth of field. This is an autofocusing lens, so you can use this with the GH5S or the GH5 or any like Olympus type body and get autofocus with this, which can really come in handy for video. I know people knock the GH5 autofocus a lot, which, you know, I get it. It's not perfect, but in some situations it can work just fine. So it's nice to have if you need it. Another way you can use the autofocusing with this lens and the GH5S is by using the rear LCD to change focus. So you can just drag focus around on the LCD. And it's good that you have those options because manually focusing this lens sucks. And the reason for that is it's focused by wire, and it's not linear in any way, shape, or form. So the way this lens works when you try to manually focus it is that if you turn the ring fast, it's not going to move focus from point A to point B faster. It's just going to move further in distance, which is not what you want. And then if you try to move it slowly, it's just not going to move very far at all. So trying to find focus between 2 points with this lens is really not great. If you have 2 points that aren't that far away, you can do it, but if you have things that are really far apart in the frame, it's really hard to do. Let's get back onto some positives. It has a pretty close minimum focus distance as well of 9.85 inches. If you do manually focus with it, there's no focus breathing, so that's also nice. An alternative to this one is the Olympus 12 to 40 millimeter f2.8. The advantage of that over this lens is that it has a manual focus clutch, which when you engage that, you get a more linear focus ring that actually has stops as well, so hard stops from minimum to infinity focus. So that lens is better for manual focus, although it's still a focus by wire lens, so it's not truly linear. And another downside to that lens is that it's not optically stabilized. And it's also much more expensive. It's a trade-off. I like this lens a lot. It's sharp, it's pretty neutral, you know, doesn't have a lot of a weird artifacting or like chromatic aberration, is pretty well controlled, especially in comparison to the Voigtlander lenses. But just the manual focus qualities of this lens are its biggest downfall. But I still use it a lot. So even despite all that, I still use it. It's probably my most commonly used lens just for its versatility and its size. Although it's not my favorite lens, I still find myself using it probably the most of any of the lenses that I have. All right, that's it. Those are all the lenses that I have currently for my GH5S. So that's long-winded, and I hope that was somewhat helpful. If you have any questions about any of these lenses or any suggestions about different lenses or whatever, please leave them in the comments. Oh, one more thing, real quick. I have one more Micro Four Thirds lens, hopefully on the way soon. It's currently being held up, I think, by the epidemic, if you want to call it that, which we can't really talk about on YouTube. But yeah, it should be shipping out sometime this month, and I'm excited to get it. I'm excited to show it to you and test it out and hopefully use it on some jobs, because it's going to be a pretty unique lens, especially for Micro Four Thirds, especially for kind of low budget, small budget stuff. So hopefully it'll get here soon, but you know, it'll get here when it gets here, and I can't wait to show it to you.